Welcome to Point channel. So today I'm going to discuss about REST API and design principles or constraints of REST API. And so I'm going to deep dive what exactly REST API, what is the resource in the REST, what is the representation, what is state, URI, okay, and how HTTP methods are internally linked to CRUD operations and what are the most popular HTTP status codes which we use in our day-to-day life. Okay, and design principles are constraints of REST API and what exactly a RESTful web service. So I'm going to discuss all these topics. So yeah, let's move to next. Yeah, so REST architecture. So prior to discuss about REST architecture, so let me give you a brief introduction of web service. So what is web service? Web service basically enables two remote computers to interact with each other for data exchange over the internet. Okay, so I mean, earlier, I mean, if one computer wants to interact with another computer for some data, okay, so then I mean, they used to interact with each other with the help of some SOAP protocol. I mean, so which is known as SOAP web services earlier. Okay, so so by that way, I mean, very commonly used business logic. We used to implement with the help of SOAP web services earlier, so that n number of clients can talk to that particular web service for their data. Okay. So later, I mean, later REST came into picture into the market to overcome what you say some drawbacks of SOAP web services and what you say. Of course, there are some pros and cons of what you say REST architecture compared to SOAP web services. Okay, that we will discuss in our next video. So so like similar to SOAP web services here also, or in REST web services also, we have a client and server. Okay, here you can see this is a client which is known as a consumer, and this is a server. Okay, which holds some resources. Okay, it's kind of a what you call, it's a kind of a provider or producer or whatever. Okay, so now here you can see the client could be anything. I mean, the client could be your mobile phone or your tablet or your laptop or desktop or your Windows machine or whatever. Okay. See, I mean, you can implement this client in either AngularJS or React or whatever. Okay, and similarly here also server what is it? The server end also you can develop one REST service. What you say using n number of languages. Okay, so the Java, Python. Okay, whatever. Okay, so I mean to say now, I mean, so this client and server will communicate with each other with the help of this HTTP protocol. Okay, so I mean, they will just seek some data from the server by sending some HTTP get method. Okay, and similarly, server will return the response back to the client with in the form of HTTP response. So internally server will do some business logic. It may fetch some data from the database and it simply returns the data back to the client. It's just a high level picture of what's happening within the REST architecture, right? So now, I mean, if we just deep dive this REST of API, so basically REST stands for representational state transfer. Okay, so the abbreviation of REST is representational state transfer. Okay, so REST is neither a specification nor a protocol. Okay, similar to SOAP is a protocol, but REST is not a protocol. REST is not a specification. Then what is a REST? Okay, so REST is an basically architectural style or design, so which is used for building lightweight and loosely coupled web services over the internet. Okay, so this is kind of a design or architectural style. Okay, so I mean with the help of this architectural style, we can develop the web services over the internet that too very lightweight and loosely coupled. Okay, so here you can see, I mean, REST is a service basically, as I said in my previous slide. So REST is a service. It's kind of a service or program which simply returns the data from the database back to the client at high level. At high level, what REST internally does in most of the real-time programs. So simply client hits some endpoint to the REST, and simply what you say, a REST service will receive that request, and it will do some business logic execution by interacting with some database, and simply returns the data back to the client in some specific representation. Okay, that's a high level REST flow. Okay, so here you can see REST is based on HTTP protocol. Okay, and REST can perform CRUD operations based on HTTP methods. So HTTP protocol has some standard HTTP methods. I mean, so it has some six standard methods. Post, get, put, delete, patch, options, right? So here, I mean, we have taken the help of these four methods. So post is used for create operations, and get is used for retrieve operations, and put is used for update operations. Okay, and similarly delete is used for delete operations, right? So yeah, this is a high level picture about REST. Okay, now we see what is resource. So resource in the sense, as per REST terminology, okay, every content which a server holds as a, we treat it as a resource. Okay, so for example, what and all a server can hold, I mean, a server can hold image files, HTML files, video files, or some business entity data, or some what you say, I mean, your entity data in the sense, I mean, your database tables information. Okay, and a lot more. So every content we can treat it as a resource in terms of REST, right? So now here you can see, I mean, HTML base, all these things. Now, then what is representation? So, so we are aware of what is a resource, right? Now, what is representation? Representation in the sense, okay. So whenever client requests a data to a server for a particular resource, so for example, I want to see the data of employee whose ID is 4, for example. Okay, so then it's my requirement. Okay, so then whenever client requests to a server for an employee whose ID is 4, then what the server does internally, server simply returns that current state or latest state of that particular resource. So state in the sense, the what you say, the data of employee whose ID is 4, that too the latest data of employee whose ID is 4. It will simply return that data back to the client in some specific representation. Okay, that representation could be either JSON or XML or text file or HTML file, or there are a number of representations are there, but these are the mostly used representations, that to JSON or XML. These two are the most commonly used representations. Okay, so server will return the resource back to the client in some specific representation. Okay, however, the resource is still with the server itself. So returning a resource data back to the client, it doesn't mean like now resource is removed at the server end. No, no, no. That's not the meaning. Okay. So client is simply looking for a data of resource. I mean, whose ID is 4 in the sense. I mean, simply server returns that data. But still the employee record whose ID is 4 will be intact at the server itself. Okay, nothing will be removed. We are just returning the response in the form of some representation. Boss, this is the employee whose ID is 4. I mean, this is his information, this is his data, or something like that. Okay, so now what exactly REST? Now when we combine all this terminology all together, then we can phrase the definition of REST something like this. So REST is a representational state transfer. So that means we are transferring the state of a resource from the server to the client in some specific representation. So this is the REST. Okay, so now um, okay, client, a client is requesting some resource to the server. Okay, now server will always return that particular resource in JSON representation. Okay, you know JSON is a JavaScript object notation. It's a very popular data format nowadays. The client and servers will communicate with each other. Okay, so um, so this is a default representation of a server is a JSON format. Now, what do you say? There is some concept in REST that is known as content negotiation. Okay, content negotiation in the sense, okay, so client can demand a server, okay, whenever it is hitting some endpoint to the server for some particular data. So client can demand a server, boss, please return the response in so and so format only. Okay, I'm expecting the data in some particular format only. Please return the response in that format only. Like that, client can demand to the server. So how he can demand? Okay, so client can send a particular request header. That header name is accept. Okay, so this is kind of a key, and value should be, for example, if client is interested to see the response in in JSON format, then he is supposed to pass. The value as application slash JSON. Or if a client is interested to see the response in XML format, then he is supposed to pass accept as a application slash XML. Okay. Okay. So this is one way, and similarly, um, client can create a new resource, okay, at server end. So that he can do with the help of HTTP post protocol. So at that particular time, so client can send the new resource data in the form of a body, okay, in the form of what you say, body of that particular request. Okay, so there also you can you can pass in some that particular request body in some specific representation. Okay, so that representation could be the same one more request header that is known as content hyphen type. So that where you can pass a value as application slash JSON or application slash XML. Okay, so if you choose this application slash JSON, then you are supposed to pass the request body in the form of JSON. If it is XML, you are supposed to pass request body in the form of XML. So this is the key points between the client and server communication. This is known as content negotiation. Okay. So then what is URI? Okay, URI in the sense basically it's a uniform resource identifier. Okay, every resource which server holds should be identified by URI, not URL. Okay, so so for example, as I said sometime before, there are a number of resources at server, right? So for example, I have some 10 tables, 10 database tables, like for example, departments, employees, cards, items, products, orders, blah 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 blah. Okay, so I mean I want to look for some specific resource, for example, products. Okay, products slash one. Okay, so so here you can see um, so as per the REST principles, okay, we are supposed to what do you say, consider resources as a plural nouns. Okay, so this is very important, plural nouns, not a verb. Okay, so for example, as I said just now, if I am looking for some employee data whose ID is one, then we are supposed to form the REST endpoint, that is URI, as a slash employees slash one. Of course, we are supposed to append like a slash, our context path HTTP localhost colon 8080 something slash API slash v1 slash employee slash one or something like that. Here I just mentioned the short form of the URI. Okay, so this is the correct notation, slash employee slash one. Okay, here employees is a plural noun. Okay, and we are not supposed to form the endpoint like slash get employees slash one. This is a wrong notation, this type of what do you say, notation we use in the case of SOAP web services, but in the case of REST we are supposed to form only plural nouns, okay, slash employees slash one slash products slash one slash orders slash one, or something like that, if you are interested, okay, in other resources. So this is a URI, okay. Now while forming the URIs, so there are two approaches: first level URI, two levels of URI. Okay, so for example, first we will discuss about the first level URI. Okay, so how we will form the endpoint. Okay, so as I said, okay, so REST deals with mostly CRUD operations, right? So let's play with employees resource data. Okay, for example, I want to fetch employee data whose ID is 1. Okay, then the URI should be something like this: slash employees slash 1. Okay, and so by looking at this particular URI, what does it mean? Okay, you are just looking this slash employees slash 1. What I'm going to do with employee data whose ID is 1? Am I going to fetch, or am I going to update, or am I going to delete? That information we are just passing in the form of HTTP method. See, here I am just passing HTTP method as get. So then when we combine these both this both HTTP method with respect to URI, then it will give you a fulfill meaning. So then that means, so by looking at get method, okay, I am interested to fetch employee data whose ID is 1. So here you can see get employee data whose ID is 1. So then basically it will return the response. So here status codes are very, very important. Just, we need to be very cautious about the status codes. It will return the status code as 200. Okay. Now similarly, okay, if you form the endpoint slash employees, okay, here there is no slash one. So what does it mean? Something we are trying to say, like we are interested in some list of employees, but again, what is the respective action? So that action we need to see here. Okay, so here I have written as a get. So that means, okay, I am interested to see all the list of employees data. So that's the meaning of slash employees. Again, the response status code is 200, right? So now if you keenly observe here, now the same URI, here there is no change. Here also slash employees, here also slash employees. Now if you see, I just changed the HTTP method from get to post. Now what does it mean? Okay, I am trying to create a new employee resource at the server with the help of this post method. Okay, obviously we need to pass that what you say, new employee data in the form of JSON or XML, okay, in the request body. So that's a different one. Okay, I'm just a high level, I'm just explaining it high level. Okay, so here this is important, status code. So whenever you hit a post call, it will return the response with status code as 201. Okay, this is important. Okay, 201, not 200. Okay, so in interviews also you will come across, okay, what is the status code of post call, HTTP post call? Okay, it's a 201. Okay, 201. Similarly, if you see the same endpoint slash employees slash 1, here I'm specifying HTTP method as put, right? So that means I'm interested in updating the employee data whose ID is 1. So obviously here also I need to pass that employee data, for which I'm going to update that particular new data. So that I need to pass in the request body. So you see he updates the employees body. Here also status code as 200 only. Now see delete operation similarly. So I'm interested in delete operation. Here I'm simply passing slash employees, right? See, if you observe one point, see, I'm just passing either slash employees or slash employees slash some ID number. Okay, but the same endpoints, the same URI, I'm just changing different HTTP methods. Accordingly, the meaning or description is getting changed here, right? So now I'm simply passing delete with the slash employees. So what does it mean? Obviously, deletes a list of all employees. So now status code is important. This time this is 204 or 204. That means no content. Okay, it simply returns this status code. Now slash employees slash 1, again delete in the sense, so I am interested in deleting that employee whose ID is 1. Again the same 204. See, so like this we need to form the endpoints. So I'm going to highlight one more representation. Here you can see This time I'm passing a query parameter name is equal to as a slash. So till now I just passed id in the form of what is a path parameter. Okay, this is a kind of a path parameter. Okay, so now this is a query parameter. Okay, slash implies question mark name is equal to as a. So what does it mean? Here I'm passing get http method, right? So I'm interested to fetch employee data whose name equal to Ajay, right? So obviously it will return the status as 200. So now I'm passing two query parameters, name equal to Ajay and city equal to Delhi. So I'm interested in looking employee data whose name is Ajay and who resides at Delhi. Okay. So similarly delete. Okay, if I pass for example endpoint slash employee question mark name is equal to Ajay, then what does it mean? Internally it will delete all the employees information whose name is Ajay at the server. Okay, so here you can see I mean the status code is 204. Okay, so this is first level. Here you can see second level. So second level in the sense, so I mean in real time we have entities at database with what is say with one to many association, right? Or different associations. So let's assume, I mean, one card can have multiple items, right? Like that one to many association. So here, if you see, okay, if I form the endpoint as like a slash card slash one slash items slash two, what does it mean? Okay, I want to fetch the item data of, I mean, item data whose item id is 2 and belongs to cart whose cart id is 1. So here you can see get item data whose id is 2, okay, which belongs to the cart whose id is 1. Obviously status code is 200. So that means, I mean, now I mean we just moved a step forward. Okay, now we are trying to fetch a second level data. Okay, so here you can see, for example, cart slash one slash items. So what does it mean? I want to fetch all the items list from the cart whose id is 1. It will also simply return the status code as 200. Okay, so similarly post call. So post call, I mean, so I want to add a new item to the cart whose id is 1. See, similarly, see here 201 is the status code, very important. Okay, similarly put call. So put call also, I mean, slash cards slash one slash item slash two. Okay, so obviously I want to update the item data whose ID is 2 and which belongs to the cart whose ID is 1. Obviously here in this case we are supposed to pass the request body of item 2 data in the JSON format, right? So similarly delete. So I want to delete all the items of a cart whose ID is 1. Simply we need to frame the endpoint or URI something like this, slash cards slash 1 slash items. Here, I mean, just observe one more point. I'm mentioning cards and items. So this, I mean, this is a standard principle, REST principle. I mean, we need to consider resources in plural nouns, not a singular noun. So that's why cards, items, or something like that. Okay. So here, so and similarly, so I'm interested in deleting the specific item. So something like this, we need to form card slash one slash item slash two. Okay, so here I'm just passing query parameter. So cart slash one slash items question mark price is equal to 100. So that means I want to delete the items whose price is 100 and belongs to the cart whose ID is 1. So um, so I want to fetch that particular data. So then get. Okay. So similarly, two query parameters, color is equal to red and price is equal to 100, something like this. So these are the various examples of two level I mean two levels of URI formation. Okay, so yeah, so popular status codes which we are using in our day-to-day life, okay, in real time. Okay, so this is the first I mean first status code 200, very famous status code. So in I mean if you attend in many interviews, I mean interviewer may ask, I mean what is the status code of what you say uh, get call response or post call response or delete call response, like that he may ask. So just to analyze your knowledge on the REST API. Okay, so here so 200 is the status code, which means okay, so everything is fine. So this is the response, okay, successful response. So that is the meaning of 200. Okay, So 201 in the sense whenever you are creating a new resource with the help of post call, okay, so immediately it will return the status code as 201. So that means created, okay, you are successfully created a new resource at the server. So that's the meaning. Similarly, 202. So 202, that means accepted. In a real-time projects, okay, most of the projects will still use this 202. So 202 in the sense, whenever client hits a particular endpoint, you are an endpoint to the server. So definitely, if that particular server takes a good amount of time, like what you say, uh, some some 6 seconds or 7 seconds, okay, so then immediately, server will send a response back to the client with the status code as 202. So that means accepted. I have accepted your request. So definitely it will take some amount of time. So I mean, I will keep on notify you. So okay. So then I mean, then client again second time he will hit, okay. So second time, third time. So internally, what happens? At some point of time, he will be able to see a 200. Okay, so that's the purpose of 202. Initially, server will send as a accepted. Okay, and if 204, 204 in the sense no content. Whenever you delete a resource, then I mean server will send a response status code as 204, no content. No content in the sense resource has been deleted successfully. Now I don't have a content. Okay. Now 400 bad request. 400 bad request in the sense whenever you try to create a new resource, obviously you need to pass that payload in the form of request body. So there, for example, you are passing in the form of JSON representation. So you need to be cautious about the JSON format. Okay. So if you what you say that JSON format is invalid, then obviously you will be able to see this 400 bad request. Now 401 unauthorized. 401 unauthorized in the sense, okay, for example, your REST call or REST service is securely protected. So in order to access that particular REST service, you are supposed to pass some credentials, some user credentials, right? So then, I mean, if you pass some wrong username or password, okay, or what do you say, uh, some uh, uh, some auth code, or right, some authentication code. If you give a wrong authentication code, so at that time you will receive this 401 unauthorized. Okay. Similarly, 403 forbidden. 403 forbidden in the sense sometimes server will uh, restrict all the clients to access that particular REST service. Okay, so at that time it will simply return the status code as 403 forbidden. So that means client does not have access to that particular REST service. Okay, similarly 404. This is very very famous. 404 not found. So whenever, okay, for example, um, whatever URI endpoint you are hitting, so that itself is not available. Okay, I mean server is not yet implemented that particular endpoint which you are trying. So then in that case you will get 404 not found. Similarly, 405 method not allowed. 405 method not allowed in the sense, so for example, okay, you are trying to hit slash employees slash one for a get call, okay, which is there, and you have seen the response, okay, well and good. Okay, now you are trying to change that HTTP method from get to delete. Okay, in fact, at the server you haven't implemented the delete endpoint itself, but still you are trying to delete that particular resource with the same endpoint slash employee slash one. You just passing delete. So then you will get this particular status code as a 404 405 method not allowed, right? So then 500 internal server error. Okay, if something goes wrong exactly during the REST service business logic execution, okay, so then I mean if some exception is encountered, so then it will throw status code as 500 internal server error back to the client. Similarly, 502 bad gateway. Okay, so let's assume if there are some network glitches between the client and server. Okay, so then it will send the response back to the client as 502 bad gateway. And one more is there, 504 here, just in the bottom. I mean, so 504 means gateway timeout. So gateway timeout in the sense, okay, so it will continuously try to ping that particular service host machine, okay, server host machine, to get the response. But it will what you say at if it is unable to receive that particular response from the server within some stipulated period of time, then it will throw gateway timeout. Okay, so these are the very popular status codes. Of course, we have other n number of status codes, I mean other status codes, but these are the very frequently used status codes while implementing a RESTful services in real time. Okay. So now coming to the important topic, design principles or constraints of REST API. So we have total 6 design principles, okay, which the REST has what is a suggested to what is a um, to follow these principles while implementing a REST API. Okay, the first one is client server, second one stateless, cache, uniform interface, layered system, and code on demand. So the sixth one is kind of optional. I mean there is no there is no mandatory rule. Okay, so now we will deep dive one by one. Okay, so what is client server? So client server in the sense, okay, so what REST is saying, boss, whenever you are implementing REST service, okay, so just maintain what is a client and server architecture. Okay, so definitely there should be some client which requests a resource to the server. Okay, similarly server is a what is a machine or a program, okay, which returns a response back to the client. So we are supposed to follow this kind of client server architecture. Okay, so basically the intention of this architecture is the client and server should be separated. They should evolve independently. Okay, of course sometimes the same host machine can act as both the client and server. Okay, and the the client need not to know about what's happening at the server side, what is it, how that REST service has been implemented. Okay, and so like this, I mean, client no need to bother about server data, and similarly, server also no need to know about the client's data. So both are separated with each other. So that kind of a client server architecture. Okay. And what is stateless? Stateless in the sense, okay, REST mainly uses the HTTP protocol, so the HTTP protocol is a stateless protocol. So now client always should communicate with the server in a stateless way. So this is the second principle. So so what is stateless way in the sense, okay, whenever client hits a URI, okay, to the server, so basically server will receive that request, right? So server should not store any data of a client at the server end. So this is the very important point. Server should not store anything about a client's data. Okay, but uh, I mean, but in reverse, okay, client can store what do you say, the server's data in its own context. Somewhere client can store, but server should not store anything about the client's data. Okay, so then client has to send all the information within the request to the server every time. So I mean, so that's why whenever client files a request, every time it is supposed to pass full information within the request to the server, right? So then only server needs to analyze that particular request. Okay, so then only server will come to know about the what you say, what client is expecting from the server end. Okay, so here you can see, okay, stateless, yeah, with the help of statelessness, I mean, it enables the scalability of the servers. Okay, so for example, in real time, I mean, usually load balancer will be there, right? So, I mean, you can have what is say 10 server instances or 20 server instances. So, like this, you can keep on increment your server instances count. Why? Because I mean, each server is nowhere dependent on other server instance, right? Why? Because all are independent requests. So every time client will send a full information to a server in each and every request. So obviously, which enables the scalability of the servers, right? So this is the benefit of statelessness. Okay. So what is cache? What is cache in the sense, okay, response received by the client should be cacheable. Okay, it's better to cache the response. So I mean, how we will inform to the client whether it should be cached or not. So that we need to include in the response. Okay, so whenever server sends the response back to the client, so somewhere it needs to include like Okay, this response needs to be cacheable at the client. Okay, or it should not be cacheable. If it is cacheable, how long it needs to be cacheable. So all that information needs to be included within the server response. Okay. So what's the benefit of this caching in the sense? Okay, so if it is really cached at the client end, okay, if client is looking for the same data after some time, then happily it will pick that data from the local client cache. So I mean, obviously the request will not be fired to the server. By that way, what you say, on the network latency will be minimized. Okay, you will see the response very quickly, very fast. So that's the beauty of cache. Okay, then what is uniform interface? So the motive of uniform interface design principle is all the clients. So for example, your tablet, your mobile phone, or your laptop. So the way they are interacting with the server should be in a uniform way, or it promotes kind of a generality. Okay, like as all clients interaction should be the same. So that's the motive of uniform interface. Okay, so basically it has a four key elements. So key elements in the sense, I mean, as I said, I mean, resources should be identified by the URI only always. Okay, so that's the first one. And the second one is client can manipulate a resource at server through a data in some specific representation, right? So what does it mean? So for example, you are firing a post call. Obviously, you are passing a request body, right? Either in JSON or XML, some specific representation, right? So then server will receive that data and it will store the data in either database or somewhere, right? So that's the meaning of. Similarly, you can even update also. You can update that resource. Again, you will file the put call. There also you are passing request body. So right. So that's the second point. Now the third point is self-descriptive or fully understandable request messages for each request. So since, as I said just some time before, so I mean, REST follows a stateless principle, right? So because of HTTP, so that's why the request whatever client is firing, that should be a self-descriptive or fully understandable. So client has to send all the information within the request, either in the form of body or headers or whatever. So then only server will understand, server will analyze the entire request, then only what you say, server will come to know what client is expecting from the server. Okay, the final one is HETEOS in the sense hypermedia as the engine of application state. So what does it mean? So whenever server sends a response back to the client for a particular resource, in addition to that, it is supposed to send additional links to the client. Okay, additional links in the sense, I mean, so the what is say relevant or relative links to the requested resource. Okay, for example, client is requested for a mobile phone. So then what you say, I mean, the server needs to send mobile information data. In addition to that, it will send some mobile chargers, okay, or mobile pouches. So that information also, so that okay, client will hit those additional links also, and he will come to know, okay, this is the mobile charger cost, or this is the mobile pouch cost. So this is kind of additional information which we are giving to the client from the server. So this is nothing but HETEOS. This is also important question from interview point of view. Okay, and similarly, what is layered system? Layered system in the sense, just at high level, what the REST is saying, okay, client should not communicate with the server in a direct way. Okay, it's always recommended to keep some layers between the client and server. Okay, so layers in the sense, okay, here is a client, here is a server. So in between layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. Okay, so then whenever client files a request, it will files a request to the layer 1. So client does not aware of all the other layers which are there after layer 1. Okay, and client even not doesn't know where the server resides. Okay, so this is a kind of a layered architecture which is recommended. Why? Because whenever if security breach also happens, okay, only layer 1 only gets impacted. Okay, so so this is kind of a layered system architecture. You know, the beauty of this architecture is, I mean, in real time we keep some load balances, right? So whenever client fights, so basically what happens, so you have a number of your server instances, and in middle some load balancer will be there. So load balancer will receive the request, and it will evenly distribute all the client requests to the available healthy server instances, right? So then client is not aware of the host name or IP address of the server machines. Okay, client knows only the load balancer details. Okay, so this is kind of a, so by that way we can achieve this laid system principle. Okay, so the last one is code on demand. Code on demand in the sense this is kind of an optional constraint. This is not, I mean, not at all mandatory to opt, but I mean, what's the meaning of this code on demand principle here is server can also send some executable code like JavaScript code or applets back to the client. Okay, so not, so till now we have just discussed, okay, server will always send some resource data back to the client, right? So in addition to resource data, server can also send some executable code. Okay. So by that way, what happens? Client will receive that executable code by in the form of downloading option, okay, and simply client can execute that code, right? But this causes a severe security threat. But this is not recommended to opt, but this is kind of optional. Okay. So now, what is RESTful web service? So till now we have discussed all the six design principles. So now, whenever a developer develops a REST API, okay, which follows all these discussed six design principles, then that REST API is known as RESTful web service or RESTful API. Okay. So yeah, so this is a just high level discussion about the important key concepts of REST API. Okay, so maybe in the in the next videos, I will just discuss about the differences between REST and SOAP and what is JAX arrays or some implementation programs, all those things. Okay, yeah. So if you really like my video, I mean, please, what do you say, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.